Welcome back, everyone. I want you to just imagine, for a second, the golden afternoon sun streaming right through a cozy kitchen window, catching the steam rising from a freshly poured cup of tea. Picture a home that's pieced together not just by wood and stone, but by this deep, unconditional love and a beautifully cozy, kind of enchanted chaos. Yeah, we're talking about the burrow. You can almost smell Molly Weasley's baking bread, right? The air is humming with the rhythmic chop of a magical knife, echoing with the distant clatter of Arthur tinkering with spark plugs out in his shed. It's straight out of a nostalgic storybook, a lived-in space where literally every mismatched chair tells a story. So today, we're diving into an absolutely captivating alternate timeline. What if the Weasleys adopted Harry Potter? We're going to explore a complete alternate universe that fundamentally changes the entire heart of the wizarding world.
I really want you to let this question sink in for a moment. What if the boy who lived never grew up under those stairs? Imagine the soft rustle of the wind through the tall grass of the Weasley orchard replacing that dull, heavy thud of Dudley jumping on the floorboards right above his head. What if, instead of going back to the cold, sterile environment of Privet Drive every single summer, where he was literally treated like a burden, Harry came home to the burrow? Imagine him trading a life where he constantly questioned his worth for a family that never, ever made him question whether he was loved. It's a completely different emotional foundation for our hero. Today's theory was inspired by Potterhead at Jody Johnston-D-Fire. Huge thanks for the incredible what-if idea that inspired this explainer. If you're enjoying these magical deep dives and cozy alternate timelines, definitely consider subscribing to the channel to help us grow.
Chapter 1: The Burrow's Newest Son. So, to really grasp how drastically Harry's life would shift, we've got to start with the exact moment the timeline splinters, the real emotional catalyst of this massive butterfly effect. We all know the canon timeline, right? In 1981, Dumbledore places Harry with his Aunt Petunia for that ancient blood protection. But imagine a moment, sometime before 1991, where Arthur and Molly Weasley discover the undeniable truth about that cupboard under the stairs. Imagine the absolute shock, the quiet heartbreak of Molly realizing a little boy has been locked away in the dark, totally denied the ordinary, messy, joyful childhood that her own kids just take for granted. There is no way they'd just sit back. They would work directly with Dumbledore. And by 1991, they actually become his legal guardians. They figure out a way to maintain that ancient protective magic while giving Harry what he desperately needs, a real home.
This quote right here brilliantly illustrates the very heart of Molly Weasley. Harry should not have to go back there. You can almost hear the fierce maternal affection in her voice, can't you? It's this protective warmth that just cuts right through decades of ancient magical plans and grand strategies. It's such a simple conclusion, but it's a realization that permanently changes Harry's destiny. The second she decides this, the lonely, malnourished orphan under the stairs ceases to exist. He's instantly replaced by a boy who suddenly finds himself with a mother who will fight the entire world for him.
Chapter 2: Brotherhood over Isolation.
In this timeline, Harry doesn't arrive at Hogwarts as a lonely 11-year-old who's barely experienced human friendship. No, he arrives as part of a chaotic, incredibly loving network. Just think of the sheer noise of the burrow. The laughter echoing up those winding staircases, doors slamming, the constant, vibrant thrum of life. He and Ron, they'd already know each other's habits inside and out before even stepping foot on the Hogwarts Express. They'd spend endless summer afternoons arguing over Quidditch plays in the orchard and sneaking midnight snacks from the kitchen. Fred and George would absolutely treat him as a brand new partner in mischief, testing out their early joke shop prototypes on him. Percy would exhaust himself trying to maintain authority over all this amplified chaos. Bill and Charlie would stand as these towering, really cool older brother figures. And Ginny? Well, Ginny grows up knowing him not as the mythical boy who lived, but simply as her brother, a boy who plays in the mud and eats breakfast at her table. But the real anchor to all of this, the steady heartbeat of the home, is Molly. She knits him into the very fabric of the family, quite literally with a beautifully lopsided jumper bearing his initial. She makes absolutely sure Harry never doubts that he belongs. The emotional warmth of her constant fussing, the extra helping of potatoes on his plate, her reassuring hugs, it fundamentally alters Harry's emotional foundation. He doesn't just have a house, he has a deep, unshakable sense of home.
Chapter 3: A Different Kind of Hero. Because, when you change a child's upbringing this drastically, you inevitably change their personality, and you change how they approach the entire wizarding world. Canon Harry is deeply selfless, yes, but he is profoundly isolated. He just habitually accepts danger because he's entirely accustomed to handling mortal threats and these crushing burdens completely by himself. But Weasley Harry? He's still extraordinarily brave for sure, but he is supported. When the whole Philosopher's Stone mystery kicks off, he doesn't just stumble into friendship with Ron, he has Ron right beside him as a lifelong brother. He's deeply connected to a network, which makes him significantly more willing to actually ask for help. He learns early on that he doesn't have to face the dark alone.
And honestly, this extends to his knowledge base too. Instead of discovering the magical world completely blind, wandering into Diagon Alley utterly bewildered, Harry grows up surrounded by two beautifully contrasting worlds. He experiences Arthur's total fascination with Muggle life, playfully tinkering with rubber ducks and spark plugs out in the shed, which is perfectly balanced by Molly's bustling, practical knowledge of wizarding traditions in the kitchen. So he enters Hogwarts with a much stronger, beautifully balanced understanding of both magic and the ordinary world.
Now, we do have to be realistic here. Being loved doesn't mean family is perfect, and this timeline wouldn't just be sunshine and daisies. Ron would still absolutely struggle with living in the shadow of his older brothers, and adding literally the most famous wizard of the age to his immediate family would undoubtedly spark some occasional jealousy and competition. There'd be shouting matches, slammed doors, normal sibling rivalries, the whole shebang. But the magic here is that this conflict occurs within a genuinely loving, utterly safe environment. Harry actually learns how to navigate human friction healthily, knowing that even after the absolute worst argument, they ultimately still want him there at the dinner table.
Chapter 4: Higher Stakes in War.
So, let's transition into the slightly darker reality of this timeline. Because as beautiful and idyllic as this upbringing is, the external world is still closing in. Adopting Harry doesn't erase the prophecy. It doesn't erase Voldemort's inevitable, creeping return to power. What it does do is take a boy who is protected by distance and isolation and surrounds him with a sprawling, loving family. And because of that, the entire Weasley family becomes a massive, undeniable target much, much earlier in the story. The emotional stakes of the war are just completely transformed. In canon, Harry often attempts to sacrifice himself because he feels like his life is his alone to give, right? He views himself as acceptable collateral. But here, Molly isn't just protecting a child she took in, she's protecting her son. And Harry, he knows exactly what he has to lose. Ron, Hermione, Ginny, Fred, George, Arthur, Molly. The terrifying emotional weight he carries into the Wizarding War is immense because an entire family is waiting for him to come home. Every single battle isn't just about saving the world anymore, it's about saving his world.
Which really begs a heavy question right before the climax of our story. Would being adopted by the Weasleys actually make Harry's life easier? Well, the stark answer is not necessarily. The Horcruxes still have to be hunted in those dark, damp forests. The darkest wizard of his generation still has to be confronted in the cold ruins of Hogwarts. The physical danger remains just as incredibly high, and honestly, the sheer fear of losing his family makes every single decision completely agonizing.
Chapter 5: The Ultimate Alternate Ending.
While the external events of the war might look somewhat similar, Harry's internal landscape changes the very meaning of the story. This is a breathtaking, almost cinematic shift in motivation. In canon, we see a boy searching for a family, fighting to eventually build a place where he belongs after the dust settles. But in this alternative universe, he enters that final harrowing battle as a completely different person. He's a boy fighting fiercely to protect the family he already has. He doesn't grow up wondering what a family feels like. He grows up knowing the exact smell of it, the sound of it, the warmth of it. And when Voldemort finally stands before him, Harry's greatest source of strength wouldn't just be the magic in his wand. It would be the unshakable knowledge that behind him stood a family, perfectly echoing what Molly had been saying all along. Harry is one of ours. That is the true, enduring magic of this found family alternate universe. Which leaves us with one final, provocative thought. How would this single change rewrite your favorite chapter of the Wizarding War? Just think about the beautiful, heartbreaking ripple effects on every single book. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer today. I highly encourage you to check out the next story on the channel to see how one small change can completely reshape the wizarding world. Keep wandering, keep exploring, and I'll see you next time.